Today I'm going to be installing some dust collection in my small workshop, and honestly, I'm not sure if everything I did was really worth it, so let's get into it. So I ran over to my local home goods store and grabbed myself a sheet of 3/4 inch plywood. I'm going to be removing that old cabinet that you just saw right there. So I dragged that out and I made sure I was going to have enough room for this giant barrel. All I've done so far is rip this sheet of plywood in half, and then I used my track saw to cut out a perfect square. Now I'm just ripping down some more plywood, which I'm going to be using to build a frame on the bottom of this cart. This cart is going to need a frame around the base because the bottom of the barrel sticks out a little bit and it rocks if you don't get it sitting flat. So I have to build a frame on the base of this that then the barrel can sit on top of and the bottom of it will rest inside. Trying to make do with what I have so I don't spend too much money. We're ripping up some strips here. I'm just cutting up all of this wood before I start the project so that I can be a little more efficient. You'll see what all this wood is used for once we get back into the building. But this right here is a dust collection accessory kit from Harbor Freight. I think it was about $60 or so for all of these parts. I'm going to be connecting all these parts to a Harbor Freight 13-gallon portable dust collector that I got off of Facebook Marketplace for extremely cheap. That's the main reason that I decided to build this big system for my shop. I was able to get the dust collector itself for so cheap that it seemed like it'd be worth it to me. But it may not be worth it to you if you have a smaller shop. So like I said, I started building a frame on the base that this big barrel can sit into. And once that was done, I test fit it and realized I messed up, so I had to add a little bit more around the frame like you can see here. And then I brought it back over to my work surface where I could add these casters. Casters are pretty expensive and I'd rather not spend my money on them. So when I'm out delivering mail, which is what I do for a job, or I'm just driving around, if I see anything on the side of the road for free that's got casters on it, I take it home, tear the casters off it, and keep the casters. Anyway, these casters right here were free for that reason. After that, it was time to build these legs. All I'm doing is taking these plywood strips and cutting them to length, then gluing them together at a 90-degree angle like you can see, just a simple butt joint. I have a new store with shirts and all sorts of stuff, link in the description. Then I glued and brad nailed this piece of wood to the inside of these two legs. Now that right there is my dust collector, and I'm using it to measure out where I'm going to put this other piece of wood because I'm going to be attaching this dust collector right to this rolling cart so I can take it with me anywhere into the shop I need to. Once I had those boards glued and nailed together, I could bring it over to the cart itself and glue and screw it right on. I measured the gap in between each leg and filled in that gap with some more wood using glue and brad nails once again. This will just make it a little bit thicker and give it more support because I'm going to be hanging the entire weight of that dust collector off of those pieces of wood, and I need it to be nice and secure. And speaking of, I didn't feel like there'd be enough support with just those legs and all that weight on it, so I decided I would attach a like angled piece of wood to help support it. So I cut these strips for the bottom, and then I attach those, as you can see. That's just a little trick right there to figure out what angle you need to make your cuts. So I glued and nailed all of these together and then realized I'm a moron and that's not going to work. It was now too narrow and wouldn't fit the big bucket. So I did knock these back off, and no big deal, I just put them on the outside of it now, like you can see right there. And the whole system rolls around nice and easy. I'm pretty happy with that. Then I made my way back over to the dust collector on my work table and I removed all of the wheels. I could drill a hole in those boards that I glued up earlier and hang this whole dust collection system off of the one hole, then lift it up and use the dust collection itself to measure out where the other holes needed to go. I drilled and threw bolts through, then attached those bolts, and when I went to move it, I realized it might tip over if I pull too hard. Alright, so I put that thing on the bottom right there so it won't tip backwards. There's the wheels actually from the dust collection. Took them up and I put them down there so if it starts to tip, it catches. This is just a piece of scrap plywood I had laying around. I'm using this to make a top for this, and I just used my table saw to rip it, and then I went and cut off the edges in kind of a circle. Not great because I don't really care that much. Using my jigsaw. I ordered the ports that you can see me measuring out all of this for on Amazon. Hold on, I'm looking up the price. According to Amazon, I paid a whopping $22 for these ports, which isn't terrible. I could drill a little pilot hole and then use my jigsaw to cut the holes out, as you can see. On the inside of your barrel, you're going to want one of the ports facing that way and the other one facing that way so that it creates a cyclone inside of the port, or inside of the barrel. You get it. Then I could just easily screw these all together and give this thing a little test. I'm going to be cutting that hose that you can see right there to make it fit better, and that way I'm not wasting too much of the hose. But I just wanted to test it out. So I attached from the dust collector itself into the big barrel, and then out of the other one comes another hose, and I just turned it on just to test to make sure it was going to pick stuff up, and it did. All of the large wood chips will end up in the big barrel, and then the bag will collect all of the fine dust. Then you can just take your big barrel and empty that out, and the small dust that's in the bag should take a very long time in my workshop to fill up. I bought a 20-foot vacuum hose off of Amazon so that I can try to leave this dust collector over in the corner and just run the hose, unless I'm using the 4-inch hose, in which case I will have to wheel it out and use it. So I don't know if you noticed earlier when I was opening that box of all the accessories from Harbor Freight, there was a divider. So I used one side of the divider for the 4-inch hose, and then the other side of the divider, I stepped it down to a 2.5-inch vacuum hose. I put a blast gate on either one, and if you don't know what a blast gate is, it's just a spot that opens and closes so that you're not sucking in air from both sides and getting less power. And that brings me to another reason why I'm not sure this is great for the smaller shops. A lot of my smaller tools like this sander have a small port like this on the back, so I bought these attachments and they can just slide on, and then you can use this piece to hook up to your vacuum hose, which will then clip on to here. The problem is I'm a bad planner is the real problem, or bad at reading the details. But the bigger problem was this is a 1.5-inch attachment, I believe. This vacuum hose is a 2.5-inch attachment. So I need to step this down. So I bought a way to step it down, and it just slides right into your hose, and then that can attach to this. I guess what my point is I think a smaller shop could probably get away with using a nice shop vac with a Cyclone attachment. It's the same process. Your shop vac hose would go into the Cyclone, and the Cyclone would have a hose that comes out to all of your dust collection ports. It's smaller, and I believe it would be significantly cheaper, but like I said, I was able to get this portable dust collector for extremely cheap. So to me, I believe it's worth it, but would it be worth it to you if you have a smaller shop? I don't know. You gotta look into the pricing and weigh it all out. Regardless, I think this is a great addition to my workshop, and I'm really excited to have it. I do think there's going to be a lot more I can do along the way, like putting some permanent hoses and stuff up along the walls in here. But I have a tendency to change my shop a lot, so having it on wheels and being able to roll it around from tool to tool seems to work for me for now. I think that's it. Come back next week and see my mobile miter saw stand with flip-up wings. See you guys. Thanks for watching. Bye.
Bye. See you again. And have a good dream.
A lot of my smaller tools like this orbital. A lot of my smaller tools like this sander